Hello and welcome to this introduction to CIMA's management case study. My name is Helen Crofts and I will be guiding you through the material in the introductory phase of your study programme. Management case study is a tough challenge, but with the right approach and some hard work, you can achieve success. Let's look at the study programme, designed to ensure you stay on track and prepare thoroughly for this exam. Starting your studies can often be the hardest part, but watching this video is getting you well on your way to exam success. We will introduce the case study, vital if this is your first CIMA case study exam. We will also think about the differences between this level and the objective case study exam, which you may have already sat. You will then need to get cracking on some technical revision. If you have recently completed your objective tests, then this stage should not be too onerous. If you passed one or more of them a while ago, or if you are lucky enough to be exempt from some or all of them, then you will need to spend more time on this stage. There is a video for each objective test, taking you through some key content and showing you the sorts of areas you need to focus on in your revision. You will also need to start analysing the pre-seen information as soon as it is available. Imagine you are preparing for a job interview and doing some research into the company. You should be immersing yourself in the detail and ensuring you can react to information provided in the exam as though you were actually employed by this company. We will provide you with tools to help ensure you get all of the relevant information from the pre-seen. Once you are comfortable with this, you should attempt the pre-course mock. This will give you a feel for the exam experience and give your tutor an idea of your abilities and understanding. The final stage of your studies is the revision course, which you will attend at Reed Business School. We will build on the skills you have developed at home and work through another mock to ensure you are exam room ready. You have access to all the key materials and resources needed to prepare for this exam. There is a study text, some technical recaps, pre-seen analysis work, and mock exams. You may want to dig out your study materials for the objective tests if you feel you need some extra help. And you will certainly need plenty of time set aside between now and the exam to revise. You may remember from the operational case study that these exams are competency-based. This means that your knowledge has already been tested in the objective tests, and the case study looks at whether you can apply that knowledge in a real-life work situation. The key skill areas are technical. You need to be able to do finance work. Business, you must understand the overall business context of the work that you are doing. People skill, the ability to influence people. And leadership, showing how to lead the organisation. Each requirement in the exam will be mapped to one or two of these skills. You won't need to worry about which skill is being tested, but you do need to ensure you show a minimum level of competence in each skill to pass the exam, so it is important you don't miss anything out. You may note that the amount of technical skill is significantly lower here than in the operational case study, 39% compared to 64%. You will definitely see this reflected in the style of requirements you see at this level. Whilst success in this exam is definitely achievable, there are certain hurdles which you must overcome to get there. Time is key. You must give yourself enough time to prepare for the exam. All the objective test content is assumed knowledge, and this can take a lot of time to revise. That said, there are 11 syllabus areas in total across the 3 objective tests. So even if you are just starting your preparation as the pre-seen information is released, you can still get all the work done. You just need to aim to recap at least 2 syllabus areas a week to keep on track. Without this knowledge, you will struggle to pass the case study. Although a lot of the requirements can be answered with some common sense and general commercial awareness, there will still be technical topics examined, and your preparation needs to cover these. It is important to realise, though, that there are no direct marks available in the case study exam for merely showing knowledge. This has already been tested in the objective tests. So you need to show an understanding of the concepts by applying them to the information in the pre-seen and unseen information. And the final hurdle is making sure you have the right exam technique. You have 3 hours to show the examiner what you can do. It is important to manage this time effectively and answer the questions set with care. In this wonderful world of social media and sharing, there are many urban myths surrounding the case study exam. Let's dispel some of these right now. One common belief is that the examiner is looking for a lot of industry research. Many students also believe that marks will be available if this research is referred to in your answer. This is definitely not the case. As far as the examiner is concerned, all of the information you need is contained within the pre-seen information, and so no credit is available for extra research. However, you may find it useful to read around the industry a bit, to try and get a deeper understanding of the sorts of issues you may face in the exam. Another myth is that the way to pass the exam is to rote learn the content from the objective tests and repeat it in your answers. This will score little, if any, marks, and is definitely not the approach to take. You also need to make sure you appreciate the difference between the operational case study and the management level exam. Although both exams test the same skills, they are in very different proportions. At this level, you should be acting as a finance manager rather than a mere finance assistant, and so more evaluation, decision making, influencing and leadership will be required in your responses. Finally, you need to be very cautious about relying on lists of top issues or key topics. Whilst we can see from the pre-seen information that certain topics may well come up in the exam, nothing is definite. You need to be well prepared to deal with a whole range of topics. Don't forget, there will be 5 variants of the exam. Each variant is likely to consist of 4 sections, each section testing 2 or even 3 topics. So more than 50 topics will be tested every sitting, and there is no way of knowing which ones you will need to deal with. Predicting what you think will be in the exam is dangerous. It can lead to poor preparation and poor answers, and should be avoided at all costs. One thing you will need to bear in mind when preparing for this exam is that all of the information you need to process will be provided on screen. You may think you are used to working on a screen, and so may not give this much thought. However, it is unlikely that you'll have done many exams on computer, and those that have been computer-based have probably been largely short-form questions and answers, like the CIMA objective tests. In the case study, you will be provided with some initial trigger information on one screen. You will then need to advance to a new screen for the task you need to complete. You may need to click on separate reference materials. And then finally, you will need to write your answer on another screen. This can make it quite difficult to process the information properly and write a comprehensive answer. However, you do have a mini whiteboard and pen to use in the exam. It is a good idea to write your notes and prepare a plan using this whiteboard. This will help you process the information you are given and will mean that you don't need to flick between the different screens quite so much. As I have already mentioned, all of the content from your objective tests is assumed knowledge for the case study. You need to make sure you have covered this material in sufficient detail. A good starting point is to use Chapter 2 of the CIMA Official Case Study textbook. This chapter will guide you through each of the syllabus areas and show you what you need to be able to explain, although obviously you will need to add context from the preceding information. Let's have a look at some of the tasks which you may be asked to complete in the case study. You need to be able to show a mix of technical and other skills, and you also need to blend the pre-seen and unseen information into your answers. All of these examples are real tasks from past exams. In August 2015, there was a question about governance. What are the leadership and governance issues arising from the proposed board structure? There is some technical knowledge involved here. You would need some understanding of the main corporate governance principles. But there is also a lot of common sense when thinking about how certain changes would affect the leadership of an organisation. For each issue, it would have been important to explain why it was an issue, rather than just listing problems. In May 2016, one of the requirements was to discuss how to set up a team to manage a pilot scheme. Not really any theory here, you just needed to use a bit of common sense. In questions like this, it is often a good idea to think about your own experiences and how you would deal with this sort of task at work. This approach can ensure your answer is practical and appropriate. In February 2018, there was a task which asked you to think about negotiating with the government. There are some ideas for negotiating techniques in the E2 syllabus, but really this is just another practical question where you need to show some common sense. In 2017, you were asked about setting up an overseas manufacturing plant and the benefits that you might find. Some of the models you study in E2 could help you to structure your answer, but you need to make sure you don't rely on theory, as your answer can become very knowledge-based, which really doesn't score many marks. The important thing for a question like this is to use the information you have been provided in the pre-seen to ensure your answer is properly applied to the case study. A generic list of points here will score little, if anything. The final example we have here is from 2016, when the case study was about a chain of pizza restaurants. The company was considering branching out into pizza delivery, and you had to consider whether the strategy was consistent with the current business. It was again important to use the information you had about the company. You needed to consider what the current strategy was, compare it with the new proposal, and identify any issues which may arise. Some of the tasks will have a bit more technical content, particularly some of the P2 areas and the F2 content. However, there will be lots of requirements that want you to display a bit of commercial awareness instead of a load of technical knowledge. So now let's think about the timings in the case study exam. As you may remember from operational case study, you will need to complete a series of timed sections, which may be anything from 30 minutes to an hour. You will see a timer begin to count down as soon as you begin the exam. Don't waste time, You need to get started straight away. Once the time has ticked down for the first section of the exam, you will be taken automatically to the next section, and there is no going back. Once that timed task is done, you cannot revisit your response. So you must make sure you plan your time carefully to ensure you address all of the requirements. Failure to do this can be very damaging, as missing a requirement can mean you are unable to score enough marks in each skill area. It is possible to skip into the next section before the full time has ticked down. My advice is don't do this. Imagine advancing on to the next section and then suddenly thinking of something else you could have written in the previous section. This could be the difference between a pass and a fail, so it is definitely worth waiting until time is up, just in case. You will have between 3 and 5 sections in your exam, and each section will be between 30 and 60 minutes. The amount of time obviously reflects the marks that are available, and therefore how much you need to write. A 45-minute task, a quarter of the exam, equates to about 25 marks. If the task requires you to answer 2 questions, then each question will be worth about 12 marks. So you're looking to explain about 6 to 12 points, depending on how much detail you go into for each point. So, how should you manage your time for each task? The first thing you should do at the beginning of each section is try to find the requirements. They are probably not going to be on the first screen. But if you start reading the information before you know what you need to do, then you are largely wasting your time. You may find it easiest to click through to the response screen and then go back one screen. This is usually where you'll find the task requirements. You need to look for how many parts there are to the requirement as well as how much time you have for each part. You can then start reading through the information provided and plan your answer. Reading and planning should take around 20% of the total time available. So for a 45-minute task, about 9 or 10 minutes. As I have already mentioned, it can be useful to do your planning on the whiteboard provided, as this can help you to develop your thoughts more than trying to plan in the answer box on the screen. Try to make sure when you are planning your answer that you don't just focus on producing a list of ideas. Think about how you will develop them. Otherwise, your final answer can end up being a bit of a list, without sufficient discussion or development. Once you have gathered your thoughts, you can start typing your response. The better your plan, the more efficiently you will be producing your answer. If you spent a minute or two thinking and then immediately started to type, you will probably find yourself typing, pausing, thinking, typing a bit more. Not a very good use of your time. It is important to keep your eye on the timer whilst you are typing. Don't just keep going until you have run out of things to say, as you may miss big chunks of the requirement, which can be very dangerous. At any point that you do find yourself running out of ideas and staring into space, it is a good approach to reread the requirements. This can focus your mind back on the task at hand, and can also prevent you from going off on a bit of a tangent when you run out of things to say. The final thing to try and do is leave yourself a few minutes to read through your answer. You won't have time for a full edit, but do at least make sure it is understandable, particularly if you've been typing so fast that you have made a lot of confusing typos. You should now have a much better idea of what you need to do to prepare for this exam. You should also have an idea of some of the challenges, and also what is expected of you in the exam. The next step is to get started on that technical revision. Success is just around the corner.